Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Nicole Zafian, and I'm the head of content and education here at CLOC. We're thrilled to bring you today's Solution Lab, The Nightmare on Implementation Street, with our presenting sponsor, NetDocuments. Before we get started, I'm just going to run through a couple of quick housekeeping things to help you get the most out of today's session. On the platform, you'll notice several boxes and tools. You have your chat feature, which you can use to engage with each other, share your thoughts, your reactions to the conversation. And then you have your Q&A box, which you can use for actual questions for the presenters. They'll take some time to respond to your questions throughout the conversation, so make sure to put those in your Q&A box as they come to you. Also, we have our resources tab, which if you haven't already, make sure to sign up for the roundtable that's happening following up from this session on Thursday. And there's information once you click that link to register so you can actually engage in a conversation around what we're talking about here today. Also, we're recording today's session, so you'll have a chance to rewatch at any time, or if you need to leave early or miss a part of this, you can come back and watch the recording. And with that, I want to again welcome you for joining us, and thank you to our amazing sponsor, NetDocuments, for putting together this really awesome presentation. I'd like to hand it over to NetDocuments Senior Account Executive, Nolan. Nolan?
Thank you very much. Thanks. Welcome everybody to A Nightmare on Implementation Street, True Tales of Legal Tech Terror. I am your moderator, as mentioned, Nolan O'Connor. NetDocuments, if y'all find yourself being terrorized by stories like the tale of the missing crucial document, the overloaded inbox from the Black Lagoon, or the Willows of Collaboration, you might want to check us out. I'll let Kevin and Kelly introduce themselves.
Should I go first, Kevin?
Go for it, Kelly. Go right ahead.
I'm Kelly Clay. I'm the Global eDiscovery Counsel and Director of Legal Technology Strategy and Head of Information Governance at GSK. And I'm happy to be here to walk through the terror with you all.
Hi, everybody. I'm Kevin Klim, Chief Commercial Officer at HBR Consulting. I've been providing consulting services for the past 22 years to legal departments and have had, during that tenure, a fair share of some tales of terror. So we've changed the names to protect the guilty in today's session. But a lot of great projects, but obviously in that amount of time, some bumps along the way. And so we hope that by sharing some of these tales of terror, all made up, of course, completely hypothetical, that you'll get a chance to hopefully have a chuckle, reflect on some of your projects, but also maybe learn from some lessons that we've had in our respective organizations and our work to avoid some of the miscues or considerations that may come up on your projects as well.
Perfect. Yeah, absolutely. Like Kevin said, the subjects and stories are anonymous in this case. And free gifts are being sent out to the first 50 people that registered. It's a scary movie kit with iTunes gift card, popcorn, some candy goodies. And there is a roundtable on Thursday to dive deeper into this and have a discussion. So if you want to click the link, I believe that's going to be in the chat box, and register for one of those gift bags as well. We'll get it over to you. Our first topic is the tale of the invisible stakeholder. Without exercising proper precautions, the invisible stakeholder can appear at any time in various forms. Sometimes the stakeholder is intentionally invisible, resulting in endless meetings with lots of talk, no action. Everything is done by committee. Sometimes the stakeholder is not intentionally hiding, but wasn't properly summoned by the project team, resulting in true terror, such as the last-minute requirements that aren't technically compatible or that exceed the product budget. So to the panel, have you ever witnessed a project where a stakeholder was identified in late stage and the project was dramatically changed at in scope at the 11th hour? And what impact did it have?
Aye, Captain Nolan. I certainly have. So I'm going to start by telling a bit of a tale of the invisible stakeholder. Kelly, you want to just give a quick description of your costume so we all know what we're staring at?
Well, I'm the stakeholder that is invisible until the end and comes in with fierce demands that puts everyone in terror.
All right, so we'll name that stakeholder here in a minute. That was invisible, but kind of scary for sure. So, all right, I'll start us off. So just sit right back and you'll hear a tale of a fateful trip. Started out as a lovely project sail aboard a legal ops ship. The project lead was young and ambitious attorney. Jack was his name. Rose was the co-lead, and she was a wise and seasoned legal ops champion. Clock Global Institute keynote speaker was her fame. The voyage was to implement e-billing and matter management system to achieve significant cost savings for the company, and it was intended to be a 6-month tour, As the project started out, they followed many of the great best practices that we often recommend and have learned over the years. The company was facing significant budget pressure, and they were burdened with significant manual processes for their e-billing and matter management systems, no workflow solution. So there was a clear sense of urgency, step one in successful change management, for the new system and for change. Jack and Rose had pulled together a powerful guiding coalition for the journey, with including practice group leaders, representative from legal ops, legal IT, and even legal finance. They had a clear vision, and while the timeline was still aggressive, it had to be, as they had in-year budget that needed to be spent this year, and because there was a storm brewing on the horizon of no budget approval for next year, no budget increase coming. They've done a lot of good things. They prototyped the system. They successfully had several run-throughs with the project team, with all impacted members of the legal team, great internal feedback. They completed design, testing, training, all was going great. Jack looked at his project plan and he screamed with his arms spread wide apart, "I'm the king of the world!" Then, a member of the project team who had not been very active, the representative from finance, mentioned the need to just run it by someone in internal audit, make sure we're all set. Little did Jack and Rose know that at the time, what seemed like a minor blip on their voyage would have had so much more under the surface that was unseen. A week before go live, an email arrived that caused Jack and Rose to freeze in their tracks. It said, since this is a financial system of record, internal audit must conduct their Sarbanes-Oxley approval process. Jack and Rose looked at each other and exclaimed, "SOX controls right ahead!" The internal audit team already had 4 other projects in queue that were being reviewed, so that invisible stakeholder, the gorilla that is Kelly, internal audit, was a major iceberg that struck the project team. With no budget for the following year and no chance to meet the timeline, the crew had made a costly mistake of not surveying all the potential impacts well beforehand. Feeling the project team was unsinkable, they lost sight of the impact a large iceberg could have since they didn't understand the invisible stakeholder beneath the surface. Filled with initial promise, the project crashed and sunk with no survivors. While their hearts may still go on, the budget allocated for the project that year did not. And as the story ended, young Jack held on to that initial project plan, filled with such promise and hope, and uttered the fateful words, "I'll never let go. I'll never let go." Thank you. I hope you appreciated the tale of the invisible stakeholder.
I'm speechless.
All right, so some lessons learned there. You can have all of the right legal team members aligned, but you need to make sure you understand the broader context that what may be going on outside of legal. One of our clients mentioned to me yesterday that he didn't fully appreciate the level of corporate IT, corporate finance bureaucracy that just has to be coordinated on some of these projects. So understanding the broader context of where there might be icebergs that you're not aware of, and you might have all of the steps followed the way you would normally around a good change management plan, but not being aware of things that may be lurking and not understanding what's underneath the surface can certainly cause some terror on your project. So things outside of your line of sight immediately can still sink your ship. All right, hopefully you guys, I see some chat in the chat window. Let's see if there's, love the costumes. Thank you, Bobby. I've been on that cruise, turned shipwreck. Yes, Grace, we hear that. Applause, Cindy, thank you, thank you, thank you, +1. All right, so certainly the hope was to tell these in a bit of a hypothetical context, but things that will resonate with each of you. And again, we're picking up on the October Halloween theme. So, all right, Nolan, back to you.
Yeah, that was awesome, Kevin. Are there any examples that either of you all have of overlooked roles or departments that were left out when these type of projects kick off?
I mean, a couple of areas that I see left out quite a bit are change impact assessments from the beginning, and the communications part of the project, and how they need to be brought in, as well as the capability piece. And those will be icebergs or pirates or whatever, depending on the type of where you're cruising in the process, and that will trigger up to leadership. As far as other departments, I think privacy is one that is often not thought of until the end, and or third-party oversight clauses typically go in during the contracting phase, but if they're thought of in advance, you don't get that defaming detractor drama at the end.
Fair enough. That's a great segue to our next topic, the defaming detractor drama. Much like a child that gets a toy taken away, there are times when someone on the project team is attached to a certain piece of software in the consideration set and has hard feelings when their choice is not selected. In this tale of terror, they will do anything in their power to build an army of haters, including but not limited to refusing to adopt a new system, talk smack to anybody that will listen, and maybe even send out a mass email with a C-suite copy that points out flaws in the tool. Have you guys ever had an experience with a this detractor, or maybe heard some tales? And what do they do to attempt to sabotage adoption?
Sure, I can tell you a story where a corporate executive moved into a new position. There was an org change, and the request of the GC was to bring in a new platform. The old platform, no one ever adopted it. It cost millions of dollars. It was just a total disaster in many ways. But that old team had originally been tasked with bringing in the new platform as well. So they had started their RFIs. In comes this new executive and wants to redo everything and talk about it. And, with that context in mind, knowing that it was a difficult situation, that things were changing and people were moving around, they really tried to, first of all, introduce a new agile approach, try and build a high-performing team, trying to listen to everyone. They, work together to redo the requirements so the RFP would be aligned, rank the responses, bring it all together, and base the decision on metrics. The team then openly discussed everything, and they got the gaps out of the way, and 95% of the team was doing great. But then in comes, give me a second here, costume change is hard.
Well worth it.
The ghost pirate comes in to sink the ship by, saying the new person is incapable of this. They don't know what they're doing. They're picking the wrong system. Everything's going to fall apart. And, there's disrupting underneath the surface, taking the team and trying to dig doubt around everyone. And, the sad part of this situation is that it only takes one. Even if all 95% or 99% are on board and moving through this new project, it takes one to bring everyone down. And this, defaming detractor is there digging and emailing and gossiping and, sending articles and consistently saying this other person doesn't, this new executive doesn't know what they're doing. So, this is a problem. And I think, excuse me again, I can't quite talk through that. This is a problem that comes up, is that as much as you try to use the tools to get everyone on board and have those high-performing teams, there's always going to be one out there. And, I've found that the best way to hit that head on is to make it transparent and to bring it out and to talk about what's going on and to have those very difficult conversations with the entire team and make sure you have support behind you. And you have to stop everything to do it, right? And if you don't, everything falls apart. And I feel like if you can do the right things, you will avoid that sink shipping from that pirate, right? He will not make you walk the plank. You will survive, but you've got to turn it around. So I'm not sure if anyone else has had similar experiences, and we have to put all of this in context too, because when you're rolling out these high profile projects in a department that is usually not thrilled about change or technology, it doesn't take much to set everyone on fire. So it's extremely disruptive.
100%. You're getting some high support in the chat of people agreeing with you. How real of a threat is it to an implementation project?
Oh yeah.
It's real. Yeah, I mean, I'll just chime in there a little bit. We had a client we were working with, and it was intended to be a department-wide implementation, and there was the reality that there was one individual who oversaw a significant practice group, and that individual was kind of the curmudgeon of the department, and the project had we were coming in at the tail end of it, trying to do kind of a post-implementation reset, because the strategy was just ignore Bob. We'll call him Bob, and just keep plugging along, and hopefully others on Bob's team who are excited about the project will just use it anyway. Well, fast forward 6 months to go live, or it's like 9-month project. This is a big project. And Bob basically told his team at the go live, like, that's a waste of your time. We're opting out. So just keep doing it the way we've always been doing it. Even though they had built a coalition of the willing to join in and start using the platform, the boss ultimately of that practice said, that's not relevant for us. I don't expect you to have to use this. I'm not sending my team to training. They have other more important things going on. And so that was a big lesson learned. So our recommendation is identify who the detractor might be and actually make them part of the project team. Bring them in from the beginning, as painful as that might be. Hear the concerns, hear it out, make them part of the team versus just hoping that they sail off into the sunset without upsetting the apple cart. How about mix a bunch of metaphors there? But that's our recommendation, is bring them in early, as opposed to hoping that the groundswell will overcome it, because ultimately people will say, well, the leader of my practice group says that I can't go to training, or I don't have time for this. And so it can harpoon a significant amount of work.
Another nautical nonsense reference. I like it. We had a question come in, but I think you really did just hit on it from Eva. Could something be done from a communication standpoint to ensure there are no misunderstandings from the beginning? We kind of talked about that. And what are the best practices to combine a checklist to make sure there are no surprises?
Well, there's always going to be surprises. You have to learn from each project. What I do think is really important is that everyone, matrix across the board, anyone that has anything to do with the project, the vendor itself, the implementation partner, the tech teams, the comms teams, the legal team, have high-performing team sessions, continue to have high-performing team sessions, understand that they're all accountable for making this happen, share that accountability across the board, and continually talk about it. Have those weekly, what went well, what went wrong, who's upset, pull it out of people. As a leader of an implementation or a change like this, you have to be very active in engaging your people and making sure they're all talking to each other. And that's where you're going to find out about the people that are detracting or are feeling detracted, and you can get on top of it quickly and succeed. If you don't, you're definitely going down.
Awesome.
Yeah, I would echo that and just say, the change, the communications is key here. We'll talk about this in the third tale about a significant investment in a system that no one actually used, with some of the lessons learned from that kind of tale of terror as well. But yeah, comms, communication up front, during, after, significant opportunity, but also significant threat if you're not laying out what you're hoping to achieve, who's going to be impacted, updates throughout. We try to, on our projects, when we work with clients, we try to have some kind of theme, either a funny acronym or some kind of, as you can already tell, we're apt to throw on costumes and try to make something fun, but make it less about a technology event and more about a change opportunity. This doesn't specifically speak to the detractor comment, but it can speak to if there's a bit of a groundswell and there's energy and there's momentum and people are excited about the voyage or the journey, whatever terminology you end up using, it can create momentum in a way that some of the detractors might feel like, I'm just one voice, and this seems to be a bit of a movement going on here with people's people are excited about it. They're getting some early previews. We've already seen some groups that went live early that are seeing success. So kind of this whole notion in the change management framework of quick wins, right? Starting to build some momentum so you don't necessarily wait till the very end and try to hope that everything goes great at the finish line, but start to have some near-term wins, some successes, because that can start to tamp down some of the detractors when they're hard to debate or hard to argue with seeing some success early. So that would be a recommendation as well. Think about how, as you're communicating, how much you get some early wins, even if that's, to Kelly's point, an agile approach where you're starting to see prototyping sooner than the very end of the project, because that can help reduce some of the negative chatter as you're starting to show some near-term wins.
Yeah,
awesome.
Absolutely. I think that, sorry, I was just going to say on top of that, it's just that it's also budgeting for that team bonding, team performance, and UAT or testing, and bringing in others to help show them how great it can be, so the detractor can hear that and start doubting why they're so dug into where they're doing. Now, if it's a detractor that's got a personal vendetta or is upset about losing a position or role, there's not really much you can do about that than flush it out, and other people will see it. But it's the person that's really dug into the other tool and will always say it's better that you can work on slowly. And I think investment in the team bonding part of an implementation, especially in legal, is overlooked, and the tools you need to succeed, and the continual discussion of why you're doing what you're doing, right? You're not just doing it to do it. Why are you doing it? Where will it take you on this journey?
I love that. The team bonding. We were talking a pizza party. What are some ideas around that?
Well, baseball outing, have someone come in and do some high performing sessions with the group, just various different things. You can be creative. Certainly you can name your team, right? You can all invest into what you think the team is doing. Hi.
Or you can have superstars show up to make special appearances as we had.
Wow! Look at this.
That's how we make the magic happen.
That's how we make the magic happen. So, hi, Mary. Nolan, you want to just give a quick welcome to?
Yeah, Mary, thank you very much for joining our panel and jumping in. Everybody, this is Mary O'Connell at Ironclad. We're excited to have her on and help answer some of these questions. Mary, we've just been talking about the defaming detractor drama, people that might derail a project, and the tale of the invisible stakeholder, some last minute problem that comes up. We've got a couple more coming up.
Yeah, and we had a last minute problem. So Anya Lyons, who's the head of legal ops and Clock board member at VMware, had a last minute conflict, so she wasn't able to attend. So she was advertised as a speaker, but she wasn't able to join. So we reached deep into our connection bank and found somebody that has some experience with Clock to come and join and share some of her perspective as well. So thank you, Mary, for hopping on here last minute and pinch hitting with some of your perspective as well. And you're muted. It's a tricky, it's like a double.
There's a little mic button up in the top right.
Don't let me interrupt. Please continue.
No worries. It's the tale of a Titanic iceberg that crept up in the middle of a project or at the end of a project and derailed an effort as well as a defaming detractor so far that was a ghost pirate. But yeah, the magician is the third piece of this. And I think maybe this is one, Mary, where after I do my little bit, maybe you can chime in because it's talking about adoption and maybe not biting off too much from the get-go. So Nolan, you want to tee up the third story?
Yeah, absolutely. And I love Tyler's comment on our last topic and asking the group in a transparent way early on who is out there, who they need to focus on as far as the detractors, and doing that early and often. Name it, tackle it, don't ignore it, and cross your fingers. Great advice, Tyler. If anybody else has any advice like that, please put it into the comment box, put it into the Q&A. I mean, this is just as much about learning from y'all as it is, us answering questions, right? That's what makes the community so great. So the third story is the six-figure tool that no one adopted. No one wants their head on the chopping block for green lighting an expensive tool that nobody uses. Sometimes we have the best intentions, but expectations and reality don't always align, much like that boutique gym membership I may have gotten or that I never went to, the organic delivery meal kits that took me too long to make, and maybe the Rosetta Stone to maybe learn that brush up on a new language. So it's understandable, to do this in your personal life sometimes, but to do this with your legal department budget, that could cost a lot. Kevin, can you tell us about a time you witnessed a tool that was implemented but not adopted?
You bet I can, partner. So I'm going to try this one. This is essentially telling a story about maybe trying to do too much, putting too many of your cards on the table at one time. All right, prepare yourselves. All right, here we go. On a warm summer evening, on a train bound for nowhere, I met a legal ops veteran. We were both too tired to sleep, so we took turns of staring out the window at the darkness. The boredom overtook us, and we began to speak. I said, "Sir, I've got a project I've been working on for months now. We've spent a lot of money with hundreds of screens built out, but I'm getting kind of worried that despite all of the features, they'll stick to old habits, creatures, so I'm just hoping they will use it, but my heart is full of doubt." He said, "Son, I've made a life out of implementing legal tech tools, knowing how to gauge their interest by the way they held their eyes. So if you don't mind me saying, I can see you're struggling with your project. For a taste of your hot coffee, I'll give you some advice." So I handed him my cup of joe, and he drank down my last swallow. And he took my extensive list of requirements, and he asked me for a pen. And the night got deathly quiet, and his face lost all expression. He said, "If you're going to play this game, boy, you got to learn when to say when. You got to know when to hold them, know when to fold them, know when to push to phase 2, and make sure the communications are fun. You never assume they will adopt it. Just because you think it's fancy, there'll be time enough for dancing when the change management is done." Now, every legal ops veteran knows that the secret to surviving is knowing what to throw away and knowing what to keep. Because every requirement's a winner and every requirement's a loser. And the best thing that you can hope for is to go live in your sleep. And when he finished speaking, he turned back toward the window, handed back a simpler tech roadmap, and he faded off to sleep. And somewhere in the darkness, the veteran, he broke even. But in his final words, I found a tip that I could keep. You gotta know when to hold them. Know when to push to phase 2 and make sure the communications are fun. You never assume they will adopt it. Just because you think it's fancy, there'll be time enough for dancing when the change management is done.
Woo!
Thank you. I appreciate that. All right, well, there you go. So the moral of that story, and this comes from a true life story. So a client mentioned that they had a product they were super excited about. They had a really good demo. They did what they were supposed to do by bringing a bunch of attorneys into into the demo, and they saw a lot of great features, and everyone got excited, and they made a long wish list of stuff they wanted, but didn't really have a prioritization of the things that were business critical. And the vendor, in their desire to satisfy the client's expectations, wrote down everything that they said they wanted, and then went and figured out how to build exactly that. Versus understanding what's the underlying business issue that they were trying to solve for, and getting, leveraging out of the box features where you could, if it got to that underlying business issue, versus hearing what the client asked them to do and making that a requirement, and then going and building exactly that. So the whole notion of knowing when to hold and fold, and what's going to be in phase 2, and make sure that you communicate clearly, is kind of the theme of that story. Because in this particular case, this is actually a real life story. They implemented the solution. 6 months later, it was overly complex. I'll read the quote. This is from a Fortune 100 legal ops leader. We relied on attorneys who created a wish list rather than reasonable expectations. We ended up replicating a lot of historical functionality from a prior system just because we were used to having it done that way, even though it wasn't really how the new system was intended to work. We considered it a technical project. We didn't think about ways that we could change our process. We just really wanted to plug in the new system. And we ended up with an overly complex, overly customized, low adoption tool. And we had to redo much of the implementation with a focus on scale down critical need business requirements. Low adoption, overly complex, a lot of time, a lot of money, and with the right intention, right? Hearing what you're bringing the people into the conversation, letting them get a sense of what the product is going to look like. In that particular case, it was a pretty early in its life cycle solution that this company was implementing. And so a lot of the stuff that was shown in a demo had not been actually implemented successfully with any of their clients. It was just it wasn't exactly vaporware because it was a feature that could have been developed, but there was no prior experience on how to actually get that implemented for the client. And so it ended up with more than 6-figure tool, a 7-figure tool that nobody implemented or no one adopted. So a tale of woe set to a bad pun of a country music star. Now that was Willie Rogers' wig with the braids, but Kenny Rogers, as those of you who are country music fans know, that was a gambler. And hopefully we don't think of our legal tech projects as gambles, but sometimes it might feel like that. So anyway, I'll shut up there. Other comments, questions? Mary, what do you think? Other than, not being surprised by my apps for puns and costumes.
Yeah, other than I got pulled into this, and what have I joined? I'm not sure, but I will comment on that. And I think, Kevin, you're exactly right. Don't overcomplicate it. And I think a large part of the legal ops job is to play that middleman, right, between gathering the requirements, talking to the vendors, but also understanding the stakeholders' needs. And when you're working with lawyers, bless them, everything is a requirement. Everything must be this way. I must have these features. And also what you said, right? It's got to be exactly the way I've always done it. And building a process or new technology around an old process or something that's broken isn't going to work. And when you talk to your vendor, and like now actually being on the vendor side has been really interesting when companies come to us and say, well, we do it this way. Well, I think you guys are like the only ones, that are doing it this way. And here's some best practices, and you can simplify your process. But no, we don't want to change the way people are doing things. Then you're going to end up doing a lot of customizations and building more complexity around the product that maybe didn't exist before that. And then, of course, it's going to be harder to use. So then you've got, too much complexity and too many clicks and what have you. And then just generally on the adoption front, I think that user experience is something that I've learned you have to focus on as like the 100%, like the first thing that's most important as you embark on a tech implementation. Because, if it's not adopted, if people don't use it, if people don't like it, then you've wasted, hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not more in some instances with my previous experiences. And I always say, and I've said this multiple times, right? There's two things that we hold to be principles. One, it's got to be walk-up usable. It can't require training for your stakeholders. You can't roll out something to a large company and expect people to give you 10, 20, 30 minutes of their time. It's just not going to happen. If they can't walk up to it and figure out how to use it, you're likely not going to get adoption. It's just too hard of a hurdle to jump over. And I just spoke to someone the other day who said, I bought this technology and they told me I just needed 10 minutes of the lawyer's time, which turned into an hour. And after an hour, the lawyers were screaming and saying, I can't figure this out. Well, user adoption, user focus, user experience, again, is number one. And then the second principle I always talk about is the new process or the new way has to be markedly better than the old way. If people are used to, say, storing documents on their laptops or keeping their templates, between them and their client groups, and now you want them to store it in a system, if it's not easier in the system, if it's not better than it is doing it the old way, they're not going to come. People just go back into like their old habits and do things the old way. So unless you have a carrot or a stick, it doesn't happen. And I'll give you an example of we developed our own in-house tool, so I won't rip on any vendors. We developed an in-house tool at Google. It was like beautiful, it had all the features, it was easy to use, and we even tried to take away all the friction where instead of asking our lawyers to type in metadata to the knowledge management system, you could just send it to this email alias and somebody on the end of it would like tag it for you, read it for you, like put everything in it. But we did not have any carrots or any sticks, and so there was no incentive for anyone to participate. No one was being told they had to use the system, and there was nothing in it for them. So the new system, the new way, wasn't better. It was more friction. It was like, what's in it for me? And that simply was not going to succeed. And like in retrospect, it's very obvious, but we had to, sometimes learn lessons the hard way.
I think just picking up on that, a recent experience I've heard about is, a group focused on the technology. Oh, this technology is going to solve it all, right? This is going to be exactly what we need. Well, they hadn't focused on the people, are the people capable of using the tool, or the people capable of rolling out the tool, right? Is the process simplified enough? Is the process what we need? Is the process really the problem? Oh, none of that matters. This tool will do it all. So let's go get this tool. And then they get the people in the process together, and they turn it all over with their requirements to the vendor. And the vendor says, we can't do this. This is too complicated. But you said you could. Well, no, we said we could do this, a simplified version of this, but we can't do this. And then so everything kind of just falls apart then. And, I think this is a continual problem, is that there's a lot of great technology out there, and it's really wonderful to understand your landscape. But the first of technology, right? But the first thing you need to understand is your people, your users, your implementers, your processes. Are they really what we need? Are they fit for purpose now? Will they be fit for purpose in 3 years? And then look for the technology. And that's when the magic starts, right? That's when you get away from the terror, and you don't have to fold your cards and sing Kenny Rogers songs.
Pull a rabbit out of a hat, right? Yeah, I mean that's a big part of it. Is there is no magic tool, right?
There are magic voices.
I've seen what's that, Lola?
There are magic voices, and you've got one, my friend.
Oh, yeah. Well, goodness. Best to be singing in the shower and not on webinars with hundreds of people. But hey, I've never been one that has much pride, so happy to humiliate myself. So the what we've heard, obviously, on multiple of these stories is the importance of communication and expectations management, because there is no perfect tool out there. They all have their challenges. They all have their issues. I've seen clients that have what I would consider to be very outdated technology, but it's widely adopted, and the users love it because they had a really thoughtful change management, really thoughtful process. They didn't try to do too much, and it's in use. And you look at it and you say, "Wow, this is not super sophisticated relative to some of the other full-featured systems out there," but it's widely adopted because it's aligned with their business process. And then conversely, I've gone into a lot of clients. We're almost in like a love it or list it phase in our legal technology practice, where you come in and it's like, okay, we can try to rehab your system. It's a really great system, but you've over-engineered your process. Even though the system itself is a really strong leading tool in terms of features and client feedback with other implementations, in some cases they're saying, we're so far gone on this project, we're so down we're down a bad dark alley that we're just going to turn around and run. Even if this was the right alley to go down, we're afraid, and this has got such a bad internal reputation now, that we have to pick a different system, even though the system they had was a perfectly viable one. because of how it was implemented. So not to come back to horror stories, but they were down a dark alley, and even though it was the right street to go down, they hadn't lit up the alley appropriately with lights and process and teams and communications. And so there was we have to eject, we have to get out of here. It was too scary, even though the product itself was a great product. Love it or list it. I'm stealing that phrase. Okay, Mary, you got it.
So can I ask a question since this is a conversation? So when you do that, the love it or list it, I have found the hardest part is actually pulling it, calling it dead, calling it a sunk cost, and for the people that have been working so hard on it, and perhaps it is their annual goal and objective to make it successful, or perhaps they've poured so much love and energy into that system that there's almost resistance from them to walk away from it, not the stakeholders, but the people working on it, call it IT, call it legal ops, whatever. How have you kind of seen that, and how do you guys deal with that?
I think that, sorry, I would just weigh in there. I've seen that happen a couple of times, but as much as, coming from litigation, you're turning things over constantly. You'll do a ton of work and it'll just go away. So I have that mindset, and I think it's just helping people get over that hurdle. You'd much rather everything you did up until now is really appreciated and valuable, and take that and understand that this isn't because of the work you did. This is because it's the right thing to do, and get on board with that, and really helping them work through it and appreciate them for what they've done, and that can move through it. But again, I think we talked about this a little bit earlier. The leader has to take the time to do it. You have to have good leadership to get through this. It just doesn't happen. You just can't throw the new associate on, this or this person or that person. You have to really lead your way through these changes.
Well, and I would just pick up on the movie theme. Don't let it feel like that individual is on their own, right? In horror movies, we always end up walking up by yourself. Whereas if you stick together as a group, you're much more likely to survive. So, even if they have felt like it was their investment, two thoughts. One, stay together as a team, kind of form that powerful guiding coalition that we talked about. And there's a 8-step change management framework that Harvard puts out, which I jokingly refer to as the other HBR, ha ha ha. But one of those is a powerful guiding coalition, and keep the team together, right? Don't have people split off and going down. I feel like it's their own project that's going to get axed. And then secondarily, what we try to do is talk about a pre-mortem. So lay out at the beginning of a project, instead of post-mortem, why it failed. Why could it fail, or why could it go down a bad path? So you're already laying out the potential that this may not be a successful project from the very beginning. Lay out, okay, why might this not work? Not to get it off on a negative tone, but allow the team to start to come to realization that some of these projects don't end up being glaring successes. And if we stick together and we have our communications down and we think about where it might go off the rails, if and when that does happen, there's a little less individual surprise and grief. I think in the relief at first and a process of grieving over all the hard work, right? An element of relief, right? When you might realize it's never too late to turn around from a bad direction you're going down. But at the same time, if you can, A, stick together as a group, and then B, have talked through pre-mortem, right? What might have happened or what might happen that could cause it to go off the rails is a little less surprising, a little less shocking, a little less traumatic when you already have read the potential script of who's going to die in the movie or who's going to get axed. So it's not as shocking.
Yep.
Awesome stuff. I know we've got about 15 minutes left. We can y'all start throwing in those comments. Tell us what you have found to be helpful with some of the problems we've talked about. Throw in some questions. When we're thinking about some of these,
I got a hot text hot off the what's it called? What's the expression I'm looking for? Hot off the press? Yeah. So a text came in from another legal ops leader, actually an award-winning legal ops leader, because I reached out to several folks to see who might be able to pinch it for Anya, and his reply was, "Go where the demand is. Success is directly related to interest and need. top-down directives are prone to fail if not accompanied by real need as articulated by those in need. So don't just assume that this is what people want. It's maybe it probably sounds obvious, but go where the demand is, not where you think people want it, but find out where people are actually having pain, having issues with their current process. We'll often recommend as part of tech roadmap projects, understanding the impact and the effort associated with projects, which includes the business impact, the individual impact, the requirement, how people feel about the current solution relative to what they want. So some element of understanding demand from within, because certainly people are going to more likely adopt and or stay, on track with a system that they feel like aligns with where their demands were, not a legal ops team that maybe didn't ask them. There's another client that we're working with currently, and it's a large legal ops team. And again, we kind of came in midstream with a technology assessment, and they said, I said, well, what's in the user feedback on your priorities? I said, well, we know what they need. We know it really well. We've been here a long time. We know what the attorneys need. I said, okay, well, have you talked to them? Like, no, they don't care about tech. We know what they need. So this idea of we know better, even if you do, in that case, they actually did, frankly, when we started digging in, but just the ability to have the conversations with the stakeholders, understand what their demands are. Not that you have to satisfy every requirement like we talked about before, because you can end up with an overly complex system, but at least engage with your end users, engage with bring some ideas perhaps, so they're not just saying, well, what do you want? Because they say, I don't know what I want until I see it, but I know what I don't want. So bring some ideas, but don't just assume that you know where the department needs to go. Get that input from the end users as well. Mary, I saw you nodding your head.
I'd love to tack on to that, because I do think, like, my legal ops team, some of them are on this call, love them. We were very smart. We knew exactly what the teams needed. But to your point, unless the teams recognize that there is a problem to start with, and for me, that was actually one of the biggest challenges, right? We would go in and say, here's the current situation. Here are the things that are holding, this group back from being truly impactful. And here's the future state that we think we could get you to. Aren't you excited about us getting you there? And we would get these faces that are saying, well, we don't really think the current state is broken or that there's even a problem here. We just need more budget, more headcount, and things are just fine. And when you have that as your stakeholder, you're not going to be successful. They have to really believe that there's a problem to start with. Otherwise, even though you think you know what's better for them, it's not going to be a winning solution. So we would then kind of pivot and go off to another team that was shouting, and maybe they were a smaller team, and maybe the impact of that project wasn't going to be as great, but we needed disciples. We needed people to kind of believe in what we were doing and to win them over. And so go after the teams that really believe that you can bring an impact and that want to partner with you, and that's going to help a ton.
Kelly, you want to speak to this comment? I love what hackathons, Shark Tanks, other innovation starters. How's that been at GSK, and other thoughts there?
Yeah, a few years ago, just within the global legal itself, they ran a couple of different Shark Tanks in various regions, and the winner from each region came together, and there was an overall winner. But what that did is, the top three, I think, were voted on at the meetings, and there was a pool before that weeded out the others. But people came together and talked about what their problems are, what their their hard spots were, what technology might be able to help them, how they would get there, and made a presentation about it and really had to sell it. And that allowed the entire department to hear problems each group is having, ideas on how to resolve that and bring it together and get leadership behind it and really understanding. So it was a bottom-up, top-down type of thing. In addition, certain groups hold hackathons because they want to try and innovate. They're very curious about how they can do things better. And, face it, we're all have more to do with less people and have to deliver faster, right? So we're looking for better ways to do things, and we realize we have to change. So engage people, have the ideas come from them. Yeah. And, I was talking to another group the other day, and I think it's really important that we incentivize curiosity and we make people accountable for delivering the change, but being a part of the change. And that way, these projects will not turn into nightmares. We won't be on Elm Street. We'll succeed. We won't be the the pirate won't come in and sink the ship, right? It's, it's all, or here, the gorilla that's coming after you. There are different ways to do things, and a lot of it is about the way we work and the way we communicate, which we've, I think, been talking a lot about here as well.
And this is going to sound like a little bit of a plug, which I guess it kind of is, but don't be afraid to tap into some experts who've been, in these movies before. They've seen how the script plays out. That doesn't have to be, sitting, writing shotgun for the entire project. But we as HBR happily just kind of say, okay, here's some considerations, here's some best practices, here's some templates, some ideas, some suggestions. Certainly, a lot of clients will engage us to help a full implementation. But even shy of that, like there's webinars, there's thought leadership pieces, there's roundtables. So use the resources that are at your disposal. Use the experts whose full-time gig is to help implement technology, so that you're not kind of stuck on the island by yourself looking around for other survivors. You've got other people who can help you that have been there before, that have figured out, how to make volleyballs into people you can talk to, and you're not cast away by yourself.
I mean, I would just like to echo that. I think that, and if you have a reputation for delivering successfully and having a great implementation and user uptake, right, then people that are having nightmares are going to come to you for advice. And the biggest thing you can do is you need to know when to raise your hand for help, when to say this is time to pivot, and you need to know people to call that you can trust. And that comes over time and experience and working with groups. And, I may have raised my hand for help for some groups to people on this call, and, it makes a huge difference. And a lot of times when you do that, you don't have a lot of time, and making sure people understand time is of the essence, and we've got to help this other group pivot as fast as possible.
Yeah,
there's the hold them. Yep.
There are so many great vendors in this space on the software side, but we don't lose a lot of customers. I'm sure a lot of other people in the space don't either. But when you do, because it does happen, it's usually because something went wrong at the start. And for me, when I'm talking to somebody about my product or anything, it's let's bring in a partner like an HBR early, so that they can get some eyes on. They can be involved early in the process, because they know better than anybody what something like this takes to get done and get done right.
All right, that's plenty of plugging for HBR, but thank you, Nolan. I appreciate it.
No, just whoever it is, right?
I'll bring out more costumes if you need me to. So.
No, it's one of the most important pieces for me.
Joke aside, that's right. Getting it right from the outset, having clarity, some templates, some tools, things that, because in that example that I cited earlier, where the client had this massive implementation, they got enamored with the demo, and a vendor who, this has been several years ago, but a vendor who wanted to show all the features that they were excited about, and they got all the attorneys super jazzed about things that ultimately they didn't even articulate as a need. The client didn't say that they needed this, but they saw it in a demo, so they got super excited about it. And being able to call out where those are real creatures versus monsters in the closet that don't actually exist, in terms of prior implementation experience, is helpful as well. So even just at the outset to say, like, does it sound right? This is what I'm hearing from my vendor. Not that there's ever intentional misleading, but sometimes sales and delivery are two different teams, and that can lead to an unaligned set of expectations from a sales conversation versus I want to hear from that vendor. Tell me the 3 other places that have implemented this before, so I can talk to those prior people that have watched this movie start to finish and know how it ends. So I would just nudge that as a recommendation as well. So tap experts, tap other prior implementation completed experiences as you're going into a new project.
I think that's great advice, and it happens all the time. A lot of times people are shown what the ideal is in 2 years, but they don't say what they're actually rolling out on the market and who's used it. And so they're showing them their research and development path, but not the here and now, and how to get to here and now fast, right? Or how to get there fast. I think another thing that I've learned over time is it takes a while to find the good partners for different things. And sometimes you're not going to flush it out in an RFP or, an OCSI or whatever. It's going to be experience. So I would say try to phase your work with external partners. If you choose someone to be a selection partner, you may not want them to be your implementation partner. And it's also a big part of what you're doing. You need that help, but you need the right help. And, you end up getting to the right help, but you have to experiment with that as well.
100%. Well, shoot, we've got about 5 minutes. I don't know if you all have any more closing thoughts. I don't see anything coming in the Q&A. But if not, we can wrap it up, give everybody the 5 minutes back.
Yeah, I think we do have in the resource, Nicole had mentioned this at the outset, but we'll be posting a resource that kind of lists out some of the tips from the various folks that we gathered to help inform some of these tales of terror, what not to do, right?
Yeah.
What not to wear, what not to do. Well, you saw what not to wear, which was all the costumes that I wore. Kelly's were fantastic. Mine were less.
Well, it is National Funk Day, apparently. Someone texted me that. So that's where the purple hat came from. It was scary in its own right. But
well, we've got the webinar coming up Thursday, more of the roundtable, to have more of an in-depth discussion on this too. What we got there? Oh man.
It's Wednesday so I know there's many Giants fans. This is my two-headed monster of the Dodgers on one side and the Lakers on the other. The Lakers had a less than ideal year last year, but yeah, this is my LA 2020 champions hat. So I wouldn't be doing justice to not finish with a hat that's repping the Dodgers, who are playing tomorrow night against the Cardinals. So for all you Giants fans, I know there's a lot of Bay Area folks in Clock. We hope to see you in the LDS soon.
Nice.
So that's my final costume. Shout out, go Dodgers.
Well, thank you to everybody in the audience for attending. Thank you to our panelists and sharing your expertise with us. As mentioned, it's in the group chat. There's a link to register for the roundtable this Thursday so that we can all kind of sit down and have more of a group conversation around some of these topics. We really hope to see you all there.
Can we get a recording of the song?
Apparently this is being recorded, so hopefully the record button didn't work. But thanks everybody for joining. This was fun.
We got to
Happy Halloween.
I think we'll be seeing some of those clips come up later.
Yeah, stay safe and stay classy, everybody. Take care.
Bye.